What was banned in your school because of a crazy incident? For picture day, the administration banned students from wearing glasses in their school photos. This was because the previous year about 9 classes of students wore the same pair of glasses and passed them around until about 75% of the student body had taken a picture with those same glasses on. It was pretty damn hilarious. Even if the kids needed their glasses, they weren't allowed to wear them out of the fear that the same bifocal bonanza would happen again. Silly bans because of apparent gang association. In high school, a friend of mine was voluntarily cleaning a closet out for a teacher for extra credit and decided it would be hilarious to climb into the dropped ceiling, scale across a pipe to the middle of the classroom, pop his head out, and sing the Spider-Man theme song from the 60s. Now there is a statement, in bold, in the Student Code of Conduct for Broward County, banning students from climbing in the ceilings. He, to this day, takes pride for that. Jukebox. High school thought putting one in the cafeteria would be a good money maker, and for a while it was. Kids were lining up playing a wide variety of whatever garbage high schoolers thought was cool in 2005 and bragging about it after. Well, one day my friend and I had enough. Our school was serving lunch from probably 10:45 till 2, so we scraped together $60 and met at the jukebox at the beginning of the first lunch. It's been a while, so I don't really remember the money to song conversion ratio. What I know is that we had Cotton Eye Joe on repeat for the entirety of that first day until around 1 PM on the second day. There was no third day. Sharpie/permanent markers. Senior year, a group of kids organized a knife fight throughout the school. Basically, the people participating would wear plain white shirts and be split into gangs. Each gang was armed with a different color marker. The goal was to stab people on other gangs as many times as possible. After a couple injuries and couple people who accidentally wore white that day, the administration got more than a little angry. Edit, plain to plain. My 3rd grade English teacher would be ashamed. They banned scarves in my high school because apparently the first year principal got the idea in her head that only gang members wear scarves. The weirdest part was we lived in an upstate New York town that never had anything close to a gang problem. Long story short, every student protested by wearing scarves the next day. CNN caught wind of it, and my school got national attention for the first and last time. Shortly after that, the principal was fired, scarves were allowed again, and everyone stopped wearing them like usual. TL. Dr. Principal banned scarves, got fired almost immediately after. Students weren't allowed to use the elevator after a couple was caught having sex in it. Glue sticks. There was a fad where people would throw glue sticks onto the ceilings all around the school. It became a big game about who can get one in the most bizarre place. A couple years after I started high school, my former middle school banned lotion because a bold young chap was found servicing himself in the locker room. They posted no lotion signs all over the school. In 8th grade, I was part of the first graduating class of a new school in my town. Since it was just starting out, administration was still finding its way. Because of this, as the year passed, they banned glue because of sniffing Sharpies ditto and vandalizing rubber bands. They were used to fire wasps, little pieces of paper, at each other, tennis balls chucked them at each other for some reason, walking across the cafeteria, or switching tables, or even walking clockwise around the cafeteria. They decided you could only walk counterclockwise around it to avoid students bumping into each other, and we had assigned seats. Axe body spray was banned from my middle school because some kid sprayed the remaining of his can into his mouth. He ended up doing some pretty serious damage to his tongue, inner mouth, throat, and even stomach, and got really sick. To be honest, I'm kinda glad it got banned. Then kids only smelled like Bo without that strange addition of whatever axe they constantly had on. No capes. I worked at a private school that required uniforms all week, but Friday was casual day. It still had a dress code, but it was very broadly defined. There was this one girl, 13 years old goth, who kept coming to school in the most bizarre outfits she could think of while still staying within the dress code. Everything she came up with for pushing the line would inevitably end up in a revision to the dress code because she found yet another loophole. Girls could wear skirts of a certain length, so she'd come in with fishnet thigh highs on. Another time it was heavy gothy black makeup. Other times it would be some bizarre hairstyle. Every time I struggled not to laugh. Finally she came in with a vampire cape her mother sewed for her. Black on the outside, red velvet inside, white collar. It was freaking awesome. Between classes she'd hold it in front of her on one arm like Bela Lugosi as she made her way to her next class. Butter packets. A group of bored middle school boys stole butter packets from the cafeteria and decided it would be hilarious to butter the top of the stairway, including the railings. A couple students slipped and the vice principal fell down the entire staircase. So yeah, after that we had to eat biscuits without butter. We weren't allowed to bring backpacks or bags of any kind to school during the last 2 weeks of the year due to a senior prank that involved water balloons filled with bleach, urine, and paint. Apparently my high school used to have an archery club. For the mentally handicapped students, you kinda see where this is going. Someone got shot with an arrow, archery club banned. Pretty much everything due to the class ahead of us. On the 8th grade trip we couldn't sit next to members of the opposite sex because some girl got fingered on the bus the year before. Then we were juniors, we couldn't have the juniors versus seniors powder puff football game because 2 guys from the grade ahead of us dry humped each other during their cheerleading routine the year before. Senior skip day was totally locked down because some guys the grade ahead of us got arrested for smoking pot. Also weren't allowed to be chaperones for the 8th grade trip when we were seniors because yup, the class ahead of us were roughhousing and some 8th grader fell off the ropes course and broke his arm. Then the senior prank was also banned because the class ahead of us decided to unleash about 50 chickens on the campus. Animal control found about 45 of them and the remaining 5 escaped into the woods and mated. By the next year there was something like 100 chickens. They kept breeding and breeding, and now that entire school is plagued with inbred feral chickens that keep wandering onto campus from the woods outside. So everything we were supposed to do just about every year got banned because of the class just before us. And it was the same for kids every time. They never got punished for it either. They were preppy jocks whose parents donated heavily to the school, so the headmistress just resorted to next year collective punishment. 13 years later, I hear that school still has inbred feral chickens. About 30 something generations of chickens, all from the same 5 that escaped. One of my teachers is very laid back, but has a strict no phone rule. While his teaching to kids decided to buy walkie-talkies and bring them to class, just to mess with the teacher. Now at the beginning of every year or semester he writes his cell phone policy on the board as well as his no walkie-talkie rule in capital letters. I managed to get flash drives banned for about 2 weeks because I put the Halo demo on the majority of the computers. Flipping pennies. Group of people would flip a penny, and if it landed on the side you called out, you would cheer. If it didn't, you still cheered. Administration said that this was being used as a distraction to the teachers, so that fights could go on elsewhere without them knowing. One guy got suspended for penny flipping. We had something similar at my middle school. Guys would stand in a circle, then someone would throw a handful of change in the center. Then they would beat the shit out of each other for the pennies. It was not a great school. Glow sticks, because at one of the dances, some kids were ripping them apart and throwing the chemicals over the crowd, resulting in some getting said chemicals in their eyes. Winter jackets. I went to a pretty redneck high school, and those large puffy Carhartt jackets were a staple of the redneck winter wardrobe. Well, one day some idiot in biology class decides that it would be a good idea to zip his jacket all the way up over his nose, pull his arms inside it, and smoke a bowl inside his jacket in the back of class. Obviously everyone could smell it, and he got caught. The administration banned the wearing of any winter jackets in class due to the incident. Usually not a big deal, except that the school population had outgrown our tiny, outdated buildings, so we had some of those temporary trailer classrooms. Having to sit in one of those during first period, in the middle of winter, with no jacket, after the heat had been turned off all night was a rare form of torture. Thanks idiot redneck stoner kid. Edit. I agree with you all. It was totally the administration who is to blame in this situation. They just reacted without thinking it through. I will add that some teachers were very understanding and would let us put coats on in the trailer when it was brutally cold in there. Hell, it was just as cold for them too. Bouncy balls. A bunch of seniors in my high school dumped a few thousand bouncy balls in the main hallway during the time between the morning periods. Kids grabbed them, started throwing them. There were reports of people getting injured, though everyone suspected such reports were exaggerated. By the next day, being caught with a bouncy ball was grounds for immediate suspension. This included holding one, passing one, tossing one, even just bouncing it outside. Stayed that way all year. Snowball fights. Our school dance was cancelled. Should note, I'm Canadian. Cannot believe the school administration would be surprised after a heavy snowfall there would not be a snowball fight. Having more than 2 or 3 finals in one day. There was someone who had all of his finals in one day and he was super stressed up and just snapped. He just gave up, started collecting as many fluorescent lights as he could get his hands on. He took all of his fluorescent lights to the top of dorm and hurled them down screaming that he was Zeus. Since then we are only allowed to have 2 or 3 finals in one day. Pokemon cards were banned at my elementary school. People complained about shooty trades, and it was basically used as currency. One kid refused to comply. My teacher made him go buy a clear backpack. It was a private school, so she apparently could do that shoot, so she could check his chute without having to dig through it. Funny thing is I have no freaking idea why that kid kept bringing them when no one else in the school did. What the frig were you doing with them, Matthew? Edit. So apparently a Matthew, with a clear backpack, in the late 90s, that went to a private school, who also happened to get Pokemon cards banned, is a super common thing on Reddit. Also many are curious this was in Colorado. Also Matthew clearly didn't have a problem finding a clear backpack, because he had one the day after my shooty teacher told him to go buy one. In my elementary school, my friends used to play pretend to be addicted to drugs and addictive substances like alcohol and smoking. One student came up with the idea that cocaine was a lot similar to sugar, so students started smuggling sugar around the school. Some genius ended up putting Kool-Aid mix into his, and then everyone started calling it happy crack. This underground kiddie drug ring ran for about 4 to 5 weeks under the school's radar until a teacher caught 2 kids making a deal. Then everyone who was involved had to sit in a giant lecture in the cafeteria and listen to the principal explain that our happy crack was a gateway drug and that it would ruin our lives. TL. Doctor, my elementary class made a drug and ran a underground ring across the school. School wasn't happy. Edit. Sweet baby Jesus. This blew up. Thanks for laughing at my childhood, guys. Military recruiters in my high school are confined to having a booth in the hallway by the front entrance and walking around the cafeteria during lunch. They are not allowed to go into classes like many other schools, except the JROTC class. This is because few years before I started there, a Navy recruiter in a class started telling students about his sexual exploits while traveling around the world. In my middle school they banned the word toast because some girl claimed she was afraid of the word, so people would scream it at her until she cried. My high school used to hold a contest for the senior boys called the Mr. Waverly contest, the school in question, of course, being named Waverly High School. They would perform a skit at the homecoming pep rally, with the skit that garnered the most applause marking the winner of the title. Of course, somebody had to have a skit where he and his friends ran, in portraying Chris Brown beating Rihanna with an umbrella. Seeing as how they were all white kids performing in blackface, the media kind of caught on. Not quite a ban, but when I was in high school, the school ceased the sale of all snacks and foods other than the standard lunch meals, because there was a food fight that involved nearly everyone in the cafeteria, and lasted the entire lunch period. Most of the administrators got hit with food in the cafeteria and all the surrounding halls were filthy. There was even a rumor that the lunch ladies kept supplying the fight with additional food. It was amazing. Clothes with writing on it. One girl came to school with pants that said campus crew on the bum and the principal thought it was a subliminal message for can you screw. Edit. Many of the responses I'm getting are saying the principal is a pervert. I get it. He had to police the school somehow. But if a girl came to school without a shirt on, would you call him a pervert for telling her to wear a shirt? Smarties ended up being banned from my middle school because kids were crushing them up and snorting the powder. Edit, these were in fact American Smerites. At my high school they do not let anyone run for prom queen because in 1972 a girl killed herself since she lost. What really puzzles me is why we have a homecoming and turnabout. My high school stopped selling snacks because a kid bought over 100 Pop-Tart packets and started giving them to random people.